Hey guys, Tim Huggins with Huggtech Computers here. Hey, a big shout out to everybody who was able to make it out to the Windows 8 kickoff party we did at the Microsoft building downtown Tempe, Arizona. We shot a little video on what they were showing us and what they were talking about with Windows 8. So if you didn't get a chance to make it out to the party, check this out.
Conversation and really kind of lay out the strategy at Microsoft about Windows 8, because it is more than just an operating system. And then we're actually going to take a look at some Windows 8 and have a conversation around Windows 8 for the small and medium business. So with that, one of the things that we think about is consumerization. And that word is actually not in the spell check yet for Word. It always comes up underlined with red because it's a new word. But I do expect you to see that added into the Webster's dictionary in the next year. But what we're talking about consumerization is that things have changed in the industry, especially from Microsoft's perspective. We have typically been a device-centric company and looking at everything from this device world. And it's like, oh, you have a device? Great, you're going to pay us for it. You have another device? Great, you're going to pay us for it. Oh, you have a third device? Great, you're going to pay us for it. To the reality is it's very user-centric now. And the idea is that a single user has multiple devices. And some of those devices are what we consider consumer-oriented devices. But the idea is that it doesn't really matter which device you want to work on. You want to work and be productive across these different devices, from the smartphone to the tablet to the notebook to the computer. And then, the behind-the-scenes servers, as we like to call them, that deliver the experience, such as your email and your productivity working with Office. And so as we look at what's happening around us, right, the cloud conversation, and what does the cloud mean to SMB? And, Microsoft, as well as our competitors, have different offerings around the cloud conversation. But one of the things that we want to look at in Windows 8 is the ability to connect to the cloud and get to your information. As you think about, data and social computing, these are things that are happening around us. There's massive amounts of information. But at the same time, we have the social, with Facebook and Twitter and all these different feeds. And we see all these different political and sports figures getting in trouble because they're using some of the social computing and sending stuff out. The one that was, really, was kind of crazy, and it was a pretty bad remark, was during the Olympics. And here's this Olympian that's been training for life to go to the Olympics, and then, she makes, a really bad mistake in social computing, and she doesn't go to the Olympics to represent her country. So, the social computing is definitely impacting the way we work. Browser-based apps, web apps, both from Microsoft, from Google, some things from Apple. But I mean, these are all the different things that are happening around us. And it was part of the strategy from Microsoft as we looked at embracing this conversation around consumerization of IT and how the world is changing around us and trying to adapt, what we're delivering and some of the models. And there's basically 4 pillars of the components. And, one of those, is one of the significant landings as we come up on Friday with Windows 8. And when I talk about Windows 8, the conversation is it's the same operating system, it's the same experience across different devices. And as we have the Windows 8 phones to the Surface devices that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, so we have some of the OEMs from Dell, Asus, etc. Then we have the tablet experience, the touch, to the desktops, that as you transcend these different devices, that you're comfortable, that it's the same experience. And that's the underlying strategy around Windows 8, is that it's a single experience across multiple devices. When you look at Apple, they have basically what I would consider 2 operating systems. They have their iOS, which we know from the iPhone and the iPad, and that's a great experience on that type of device. But it's not necessarily a creating device. It's a consumption device. Then they have their Mac OS, which, a lot of times I see people on the planes. They have an iPad, they're watching a movie, they're doing something, they're surfing the web, etc. And then when they want to do work, they pull out a laptop. It might be Microsoft oriented, it might be a Mac. but they actually pull out a different device, and it's a separate experience. Then some of these other pillars we're not going to spend a lot of time on today, but it's the idea that Microsoft is taking things into consideration when we look at security management. And notice, these are representative of the competition, right? Because we look at management security, you may have non-Microsoft devices, and that's okay. We still need to manage and secure them, and we're going to do that through the Microsoft platform. And then, of course, we have some of the offerings. I heard the G word over there. Didn't get involved in the conversation, but I heard the G word about Google and Gmail and stuff. Just realize that Microsoft does have a great cloud offering with Office and Office 365. So, opportunities to look at leveraging the Microsoft cloud offerings as well. And then development. One of the big things that we talk about in Windows 8 is that there's what's now an app store. Well, those applications are being developed, and we want to see those developed, obviously, on the Microsoft platform to support the new app store. So, as I was putting some of the different slides, which as a Microsoft employee, you may not be aware, but I have access to hundreds of thousands of slides. But I was like, okay, it's the SMB audience, what's important, right? So I wanted to lay the foundation with, that there really was, a strategy behind Windows 8 and consumerization of IT. But then, what are some of the needs that we're seeing to the small business, right? And, especially small business owners balance work and life, right? We call it the work-life blur, especially, as small business owners. You have a lot of time, money, and effort invested, and it's probably not an 8-hour workday. It's probably much longer than that, but the ability to have that balance and be able to be productive on the tools, but also, have that personal experience as well, and have some of the fun things on the computer as well. The ability to stay connected, mobile, based on your connectivity, definitely security. Security is always important because, what I typically talk about, from a business perspective is besides your employees, right? Because to me, your employees are always your number one asset. Besides your employees, the number two asset is your competitive advantage, your intellectual property, your business model. We want to make sure that we protect that information and what separates you from your competitors. And some of that security that we've had in, some editions of Windows 7 actually have moved into what we call the Windows 8 Professional line to give you that BitLocker control. So some improved security and performance in the Windows 8 technology. So this is one of the things that we see. There's tension in the market that I want some of these cool devices. And then the other thing is kind of, I need a PC. And so, again, look at some of the different form factors. Now, I do have a Samsung Slate that we're going to see in just a moment. But, this is not a backward screen. In fact, it's very similar to one of my PCs that I'm going to do a demo with in just a moment, where, we can flip the screen around and it's a tablet touch. Now, this is, well over a year old. But when I purchased it with the mindset that, we're going to have Windows 8, it's going to be touch, I want to have some of that flexibility. Now, what is extremely different is that if you look at this is pretty thick. It's very thick, actually, compared to some of these thin devices that are going to be released from our OEMs. This is the actual slate that I'm running on. This is a Samsung 7 slate. And this is a very powerful machine. But again, part of that is the form factor. But again, that's a year old. Some of the things that are coming out are incredible from the devices. And we're actually going to talk about the Surface in just a moment. But the idea that if you are looking at purchasing a new PC, taking advantage of some of these new form factors, taking advantage of touch is going to be part of that conversation. But that definitely doesn't mean you have to have these devices, because here I'm running Windows 8 on a Windows 7 device, and I'm going to show you another cool demo with another Windows 7 machine that I'm going to run Windows 8 on in a very unique manner. And so as we think about the experience, the OEMs as we call them, that's Dell, Asus, Sony, HP, Lenovo, just pick Acer, just pick one, right? They're all building, this concept, right? That, there is a fair amount that are touch, but a mouse and keyboard works great as well. Long battery life, modern security, some of the different form factors, some new capabilities in Windows 8. And so just to highlight some of the capabilities and features, we do have obviously touch, but also great with keyboard and mouse. The ability to work with the live tile applications and the apps. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that when we get into the demo. And kind of show the new interface, but then what's actually there as well is your traditional desktop and the ability to work from that desktop, to pin your applications, to find your files. The new Explorer is a great addition into Windows 8. But we also have the live tile view and applications that are being fed into the live tiles. So a way to work in two different styles. So think about mobility. I'm actually going to show you Windows to Go, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's basically a USB drive, very specific type. But I have Windows 8 on it, and I can run the entire Windows 8 operating system from that USB stick. Let's think about security, trusted boot, and BitLocker. We actually talked a little bit about BitLocker, the ability to encrypt the entire hard drive or encrypt your USB devices. You can even encrypt the Windows to Go device as well. And so, that plays into some of that security. And then trusted boot. Trusted boot is a way that, Huggtech, working with microwaves, can deliver a computer that has a very specific signature, and as it boots up, it's always checking to make sure that it hasn't been compromised. And it also offers a very fast boot experience as well. Now, with my Samsung Slate, it's approximately 5 seconds, which, in the Windows world, that's like astonishing, right? But it gets to about 2 or 3 as we get into the trusted boot as well. And then this is, some additional capabilities. I'm not going to go into details with our conversation today, but it gets into some of the ways that we can deliver that experience. And again, working with Huggtech microwaves to decide, do we want to take advantage of some of virtualization? Do we want to take advantage of things like VDI and RDS, which is the virtual desktops and remote desktop? Again, it's a way to deliver the experience. And the concept there is Windows 8 has been developed so that we can have a premium experience across multiple devices, but we need to decide what is the best way to deliver that experience. And then finally, as we think about going mobile, again, we're tying into some of that cloud conversation. Again, the idea that we have this, different range of devices, and yes, that is a USB stick. We're going to see that in just a moment. But the idea that we can tie into Skype and SkyDrive, and then other social applications, as well as maybe we tie into Office 365. So the ability to work seamlessly into the cloud, into the social, into the Office 365 tools, and yes, you could do it into some of the competitive